Heyo, welcome to a new series where I will present some public WarGears, probably mostly on the SteamWar server because that's where I play. I hope you're having a wonderful Christmas so far. I really should be doing a bunch of other things, but I want to show that this channel is not inactive. I will start off with a QuickGear public constructed by a player called the Breadbeard. This one is called the Hornet, and I personally like the design very much. In these videos, I am going to mostly just show off how you can use the cannons, because as a new player, using these cannons is probably going to be a pretty confusing experience, and I want you to be able to get the most out of them. So let's start on the roof. As you can see, it has 4 artillery cannons on the roof, 2 of the same on the outer sides and 2 of the same kind on the inner sides. Let's start with probably the easiest cannon in the gear. This is a very standard artillery cannon, pretty similar to what I showed you in my progression series video, as in we have a little bit of propellant, we have a little bit of projectiles, and these projectiles are just primed much later than the propellant and then pushed onto some launch point. And then the projectiles will fly in a wide arc, land on the opponent, and then tunnel down. This is the prime button, firing button, whatever. And as you can see, I can fire this once more. This will now just start carving downwards. And this one also has a horizontal shift mode. If I open this fence gate, the extended hitbox of the fence gate is removed and the propellant will be flushed not against a full 16 pixel sideways hitbox, but against this little amethyst instead. What this does is it changes the spatial relationship of the propellant and the projectiles. What that looks like, I will demonstrate. As you can see, it now flies slightly to the right, and it does so consistently. And this cannon is exactly the same way over here, just flipped, of course. One last thing I will show about this cannon is that you can reduce the projectile delay. Maybe you see the opponent running around on the roof, or maybe you want to have an earlier first strike to maybe damage their artillery cannons, so yours live and theirs don't. And something you can do is reduce the projectile delay, and then you could maybe just load one projectile, and now it will prime much earlier, and you will have a quicker first strike or a way to defeat players who are currently running around on the top. The next cannon is a downstab, which is a concept I have not yet introduced in my school series or progression series. This is basically an artillery, right? So we're going to have projectiles that are primed much later than the propellants. These projectiles will fly in a wide arc, but what's different about these is that there are actually going to be 2 chunks of projectiles, one that's going to fly higher and one that's going to fly lower. And the projectile chunk that flies higher is going to explode earlier, which will slam the other lower projectile chunk downwards. What this does is it creates a more straight channel downwards, which is neat because, as you've seen in my progression demonstration, the channels of these regular artilleries is going to be just like their arc, curved a little bit, which can be undesirable. So these 2 chambers in the front are both projectiles, the 2 different chunks. This is the firing button. And as you can see, you have one higher chunk and one lower chunk, and the higher chunk explodes first, slamming the rest on the bottom. And now if I continuously fire this, we're going to get a pretty straight channel of damage in the opposing gear. I'll fire this once more for demonstration. And as you can see, you have a pretty straight channel. This cannon also has modes. You can change how far to the front or back this cannon will hit using this delay right here. What this will affect is how soon or how late the projectile chunk that explodes first will explode, which in turn determines how far to the front or how far to the back the projectile chunks will be when this happens, and when in turn the lower chunk will get slammed downwards. By this logic, if I increase this delay right here, the upper chunk will explode later, and thus the lower chunk will have traveled farther to the back of the opponent before getting slammed downwards. So we expect these projectiles to hit a little bit farther to the back, which is true. And if you remember, originally it was on 2, so now we're going to put it on 1, and now we expect it to hit further to the front. And that is also correct. Now, to get into the lower decks of this gear, you can either take this shaft with a ladder right here, this shaft that has no ladder and just lets you drop down, or one of these two regular staircases that directly lead to lookouts. This WarGear is completely symmetrical, so always assume that if I show something on one side, it's also there on the other side. So there is also a drop-down shaft there, there's also a staircase there, and there's also a lookout on this side. So if you take one of these drop-down shafts, you will stand directly before one of the continuously reloadable static cannons. You have a lookout that you can open here. What I mean by continuously reloadable is that you can just keep loading this cannon and firing it, and you can just stand here and you will not take damage. This is the case because the launch point is far enough below us to have the propellant not damage us. As you can see, there is quite a lot to this cannon's interface, but fear not, I'm going to explain it all. First of all, if we fire it in its default configuration, this will happen. It just hits pretty straightforward and centrally. Now you have this delay line, and if you remove all the delay from this line, I will demonstrate what that does. As you can see, now it shifts much farther to the left. This is due to a technique called water shifting, which I'm going to eventually demonstrate. All delays between full and empty just change how far to the left you're going to go. So for example, if I put half the delay in, due to the power of water shifting, we're going to now hit between these two, pretty much. Next up, we have the projectile delay. If I increase these to full, we now just delay the explosion of the projectiles. So if we look at the opponent, you will see that the projectiles arrive and land and then explode, which is useful for when you're already deep inside the opponent and need the projectiles to explode later. Now you also have vertical shifting modes. So if you flip this lever that says oben treffen, which just means hit higher, and I flip that and we prime this, as you can see, the cannon just shoots higher. And we have another switch on the opposite side. You might guess what it does. It just makes the cannon hit lower. And if you accidentally flip both of these switches, it will also hit low. So yeah, that's it. That's the entire cannon. As you can see, it covers pretty much the entire opponent. I could also hit it up there, I could hit down there, I could hit there, I could hit there. Let's just go through the situation that I want to hit this top left part. I'm going to have to hit higher vertically, which was this lever, and I'm going to have to hit fully to the left, which means I'm going to remove all of the delay from this line, and you will be able to see the projectiles fly there. Nice. If you now go towards the center of the WarGear and enter this corridor right here, you will get to a stabbing cannon. This cannon also has both a vertical and a horizontal shifting mode. This one requires 20 TNT to fire. I'm just going to fill it up real quick, and then we'll see what happens. As you can see, we deal some very neat, impactful damage very centrally in the opponent, sort of lower. For every second shot you do with the cannon, you will need to open this fence gate, which increases the delay because now we have an existing channel in the opponent and the projectiles will need to be delayed slightly to still deal damage. And now you can see we have a pretty deep channel in the opponent, which is very useful. Now I said we can also shift horizontally. We can open this fence gate to do so. We will need to close this one again because now we're performing a first strike on this cannon. And now we expect the cannon to hit on a different position horizontally. As you can see, now it shoots more straightforward to the outside. And again, if I shot again, I would open this fence gate. I'm not going to do it this time. I'm going to demonstrate that this cannon can also hit higher by increasing the delay of this repeater. And of course, we can also hit high and close this fence gate again. And now we expect there to be a hit there, which works perfectly fine. So these are very potent cannons, but as you can see, they're very far to the front, so as soon as any damage is received here, this cannon is going to break. So it's strong, but also brittle. And of course, 20 TNT is a lot for QuickGear. And if we go all the way to the bottom, you will be able to see a row of 4 very traditionally built static cannons. They have some propellant here, they have some projectiles here, and depending on how much propellant you load, these will hit more concentrated on the bottom or on the top. If we load 4 propellants and our 8 projectiles, as you can see, it hits a little bit more concentrated on the bottom. If I load 5 propellants, it hits a little more compacted on the top. And if we load all of the propellants, as you can see, it hits very compacted on the top. You can also open these shutters without having to destroy the glass by flipping these levers. And then, as you can see, these shutters open. Now prime motion could cause problems when projectiles jump onto this block instead of the brewing stands, but luckily that problem is not actually a problem, as the shutters close quickly before the projectiles prime anyways. One interesting thing you can do with this cannon is do something called a projectile shift. As you can see, the delays for each side of the projectiles is separate, so we can just prime one side earlier, which will drive the projectiles of the other side into the opposite direction. This can be very useful for carving out parts of the opponent. I'm going to demonstrate up close what I mean once more. As you can see, the projectiles on the right side exploded first, driving the other side further to the left, which explodes later. And that's it. That's all the cannons that are in the Hornet QuickGear public. I personally think it's very fun to fight in this one. As per usual, feel free to join the WarGears International Discord server. If you have questions, ask them. If you have critique, let me know. If you want to see more, like, subscribe, maybe leave a comment, and I'll see you next time.